Ever wondered what it was really like to be a bounty hunter in the Wild West? Forget the cool, stoic heroes you see in the movies. The reality was a chaotic, brutal, and downright mad profession. Let's dive into the crazy world of Old West bounty hunting. First off, who were these guys? They weren't always sheriffs or marshals. In fact, many were just regular folks looking to make a quick buck. Farmers, ex-soldiers, even cowboys would see a wanted poster and think, "Hey, I could use that cash." The problem was, most of them had absolutely no idea what they were doing. They were amateurs chasing hardened criminals, and you can imagine how that usually ended. It was a high-risk, high-reward game where the odds were definitely not in their favor. The system itself was a recipe for chaos. Wanted posters were the main source of information, but they were often vague and inaccurate. Imagine a poster that says, "Wanted, John Smith for horse theft. Reward, $50. Description, medium height, brown hair." In a town full of medium-height guys with brown hair, how do you find the right one? This led to countless cases of mistaken identity. Innocent people were dragged in, sometimes roughed up or worse, all because they vaguely matched a poorly drawn sketch or a generic description. It was a mess. And let's talk about that dead or alive clause. While it sounds dramatic, alive was always preferred. Why? Because you couldn't put a dead body on trial. To legally claim a bounty, you usually had to bring the suspect back to face a judge. But bringing a desperate outlaw back alive was incredibly dangerous. They would fight tooth and nail to escape. So, many bounty hunters decided it was just easier and safer to bring them back dead. This led to a lot of questionable shootings. Did the outlaw really draw first? Or did the bounty hunter just want to avoid a long, dangerous trip back to town with a live prisoner? The line between justice and murder became very, very blurry. This gave rise to the bounty killer, a figure far from the heroic image we have today. These were men who specialized in killing for cash. They weren't interested in justice. They were interested in the reward. Some became notorious for their brutality, earning a reputation as being just as dangerous as the outlaws they hunted. They were essentially government-sanctioned assassins, and their methods were often indistinguishable from the criminals they were paid to stop. The bounties themselves could be surprisingly low. While a famous outlaw like Jesse James might have a massive reward on his head, most bounties were for small-time crooks. A few dollars for a cattle rustler, maybe 20 for a horse thief. After you factored in the cost of travel, supplies, and the very real risk of getting shot, it often wasn't worth it. Many bounty hunters ended up broke, injured, or dead, all for a handful of coins. It was a desperate job for desperate men. Then there was the jurisdiction nightmare. A criminal could commit a crime in one state, cross the border into another, and suddenly the local sheriff had no authority. This is where bounty hunters, or detectives as they sometimes called themselves, came in. Private agencies like the famous Pinkerton National Detective Agency operated across state lines. They were hired by railroads and banks to hunt down train robbers and bank robbers. The Pinkertons were relentless and highly effective, but they also played by their own rules. They were a private army, accountable to no one but their clients, and their tactics were often criticized as heavy-handed and violent. Their pursuit of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is legendary, chasing them all the way to South America. But it wasn't all just chasing outlaws through dusty canyons. A lot of bounty hunting was tedious detective work. It involved tracking leads, interviewing witnesses, and spending weeks on the trail. It was less about quick-draw shootouts and more about patience and perseverance. A successful bounty hunter needed to be a good tracker, a skilled negotiator, and a tough fighter. They had to be able to read people and survive in harsh environments for extended periods. It was a complex skill set that very few people actually possessed. The equipment was also a far cry from the fancy gear in movies. A reliable horse, a good rifle, a sidearm, and a sturdy rope were the basics. No GPS, no radios, no backup. You were on your own. If your horse went lame or you ran out of water in the middle of the desert, that was it. Game over. The environment was often a bigger threat than the outlaws themselves. Blizzards, flash floods, rattlesnakes, and sheer exhaustion claimed the lives of many would-be bounty hunters. And what happened when you finally caught your man? The journey back was often the most dangerous part. The outlaw's gang might try to rescue him. The prisoner himself would be looking for any opportunity to escape. You couldn't sleep soundly. You had to be on guard 24/7, sometimes for days or weeks. One famous lawman, Bass Reeves, was known for bringing in multiple prisoners at once, sometimes chaining them all together and marching them hundreds of miles. The logistics and the sheer nerve required were incredible. So, was it all madness? In many ways, yes. It was a chaotic, unregulated, and incredibly dangerous profession that attracted a wild mix of people. Idealistic lawmen, greedy opportunists, and cold-blooded killers all wore the title of bounty hunter. It was a brutal chapter in American history, born out of the necessity to bring some semblance of order to a lawless frontier. The reality of bounty hunting was gritty, morally ambiguous, and far more complex than the simple hero stories we love to tell. It was a true reflection of the Wild West itself, messy, violent, and utterly fascinating. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this dive into the real Wild West interesting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what piece of history you'd like to see uncovered next. See you in the next one.